Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Richard James Burgess. I'm the president and CEO of A2IM, the American Association of Independent Music. And this is the first in our series of Indiescussions. And we're going to be in conversation today with Vic Zaraya. Vic is the president of KIDZ BOP, president of RT Industries, and formerly head of leading independent Razor and Tie. He's a CPA by training. He's worked in all aspects of the music industry. Vic has been a board member of A2IM for many years, a member of its finance committee. He sits on the Sound Exchange board. And to be honest, Vic knows as much as anyone I know about managing finances of independent labels. So welcome, Vic. It's really good to have you here, and thank you for agreeing to do this with us.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you for having me as well. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to providing as much information today as I possibly can to help all of our independent label members get through this incredibly unique and trying period.
So obviously, as you just said, this is an incredibly trying period. It's something none of us have ever seen in our lifetimes, and hopefully we'll never see anything like this again. But what actions right now do you think would be directly beneficial for an independent label to take? And that's small, medium, and large, and you know, take it however you want to, in whatever direction you want to take it.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, I'll start with maybe I'll give everybody. It's weird not being able to see anybody and see what the reaction. Yeah. But I'll try and give everybody a little bit of background about myself. Maybe start with some kind of what I was thinking about, our guiding principles, and then we can talk about some specifics about you know, what labels can do of all sizes. So just to, you know, so everybody knows where I stand, as Richard says, I'm the current president of KIDZ BOP, which is a part of Concord. I also have a small label, RT Industries, that's an A2IM member, and I ran Razor and Tie, our music publishing company, our label, and KIDZ BOP for many years, starting initially as a staff accountant and kind of rising up eventually to various roles. You know, in that experience, I've worked on all aspects of the company. So not only the finance and operations, but sales and marketing and A&R, and really almost every area of a music company. So I come to it with some perspective. Also, I have unfortunately lived through a few of these crises already. A lot of what we'll, you know, learn today comes from my experience back, starting back, unfortunately, 9/11. Then with the downturn that we had in 2009, and of course to today. The good news is, even though those things at the time were trying and terrible, we bounced back from them, and you know, we always ended up better than we were at the beginning. So I think that this will be hopefully very similar, and when we look back on this in a few years, we will be, you know, we will be happy that we lived through it, but we'll have learned something from it. So that's who I am. I think a couple of things to consider as you go through, you know, this topic is cash flow management, but I really kind of wanted to talk more about just how you address your business in, you know, a trying time like this. And I think one of the advantages of being in this type of time is that it really makes you ask questions about what is your business? You know, what are you actually trying to do each day? What is, you know, what is important, right? It provides clarity to you as you're going to go through the cash flow exercise I'm going to recommend about what matters, right? And, you know, I think one of the things I hear every day is we have to do this. We have to do this. We have to. And I think this really will help you decide, do you have to, or is it something that you want to? And I think once you can really separate those type of things out, you really get to the core of what you're doing. Also understand your own motivations, right? Why are you in the music business, right? Are you in the music business because you love art? Are you in the music business because you love music? Because you love working with artists and songwriters? Are you in the music business because you like cash flow multiples, you know, and making money on music? Whatever your motivation is, I think this will help establish, and kind of these type of moments in life really help you define kind of who you are, right? I also think, you know, one that you should know is you're going to get a lot of pressures. You're going to have lots of pressures from your partners, your family members, your artists, your internal monologue about what you should and shouldn't do. And just know that's normal. Kind of manage those. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You have the tools within your brain and your knowledge to take, to manage your business. And if I can leave you with anything, it's going to be that, which is, you know, you can handle this. You got this. It's not something that anybody, if you're running your own business, you got this. You know how to run your business. You're in control. And the last piece of mind as I get into the cash flow part is I think that I personally am viewing the next few months as kind of an on hold period. I think it's like the goal here is to maintain, not to be worse off. If you can be better off, fantastic. Some of us will be lucky, but I think you should consider, how do I take the next few months and just get to the period where business is going to start again? With the exception of if something is incredible comes along and you have such an obvious thing that you must do right now, by all means, do it, be bold. But for the most part, I think it's about kind of a maintenance type of, situation at this point. So with that all said, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything I want to say on my notes here. Also, you'll notice I'm in a room that makes no sense with sports memorabilia. I'm wearing a USA jersey, which comes from 2010, the last time that we had a tough time like this. So I'm getting some inspiration, and also we're the A2IM, so USA for those out there. We're going to be okay. All right. So the number one thing I think that everybody can do right now is basically really dig into the actual cash coming in and cash going out of your business. I hope that every single one of you have done this already. You've already had a couple weeks, but if you have not done this, the number one thing you can do is create a forecast for the next 3 months, where you literally just write April, May, and June, all the different places where cash is coming in and all the different places that cash is going out. It sounds boring. It sounds simple. Literally, if you haven't done that, do it right after this today. Once you've done that, and if you're a small independent label with one person, you can list every expense, every single bill coming in, every single source coming in. If you're a multi-million dollar, 12-person label, then perhaps you'll have categories. But do that because that's the first step to this. Secondarily, I think what you have to do is look through every single source of cash and revenue that you have coming in and think about it. Is this right? Who are these partners? Are they going to pay me? Can I go to them and ask for more money? And that'll be important later. Then similarly with every expense, when you list an expense, list everything out and go, does this expense lead to the top? If it doesn't, why am I doing it? Am I doing it because I feel like I should do it? I feel like we're marketing the artist. I feel like, it's this and that. What are you doing? And what do you actually have to do? And know that no one can make you write a check or send a wire unless you decide to do it. And, so every single thing you do is kind of within your ability to manage. Now, once you've done that, I think you're going to quickly see there are probably things that you're doing that you don't need to do today, right? You just don't need to do. I'd love to get some questions soon from people to ask you what you can do, but I'll give you a few examples of things that, I've experienced in my career where I was surprised what you could actually do. Now note, I'm not suggesting that you should not pay people, and I'm not suggesting that you should. I think you should keep your employees. I think this is going to be a 3 to 6 month thing, but that doesn't mean you can't extend what you're doing for everybody else. If you have a vendor that you pay, that's a big company, and you pay them every 30 days, well, can you pay them 45 or 60? You probably can. If you have a one-person independent contractor that relies on that income for their life, I would probably not choose to pay that one late. Going back to the first thing I said, which is remember how you treat people now. You will have to live with the way you treated people, and you will have to live with the consequences of that. But my general experience is that if you have bigger vendors, and if you tell them what you're going to do and you work it out with them kind of in advance, they'll accept it so long as they know they're going to get paid. If your intent is, I don't think my business is going to survive, I just want to stall out, then that's a totally different seminar. We can do that another day. I don't think that's not what this is. This is about cash flow management for businesses that are going to be ongoing concerns, not for businesses that are just, figuring out how to not pay people. So that's kind of my general philosophy. And I would love to field some questions on it because I think it's kind of a magical tool that is really quite simple. I will tell you a few examples of things that I did, some of which I'm proud of, some of which I'm not. Is, you know, back in the day, I remember we had, during the crisis of 2009, you know, we had a very big artist advance due, and it was a substantial amount, you know, and we were like, we're going to call this artist and we're going to tell them we're going to pay it 60 days later. And they weren't happy. But we paid it and everything moved on. Similarly, there was I remember that we were paying our artist royalties on time, as you should. There was a big artist royalty that we decided we would basically tell them we were going to pay late. We called them, we explained the situation, we talked to them about it, we paid them 3 months later. Were they happy about it? No. Did they appreciate that we called and didn't just hide from them? Absolutely. And I think the last thing I'll say is hiding in the ground and not paying, your bills and just hoping it'll go away. That's not going to do it. But managing your situation is what you can do. And I think Richard's going to talk about ask me some questions about like programs to get advances. I noticed those things are happening. So we can talk through some of those ways to go through each of your sources of income and figure out how to maybe get some advances, how to make those work a little better for you right now. But that's my overall thought, answering your question in a very long-winded way.
Well, thank you.
What labels should do. Do that, number one.
That's great advice. Thank you. So, I mean, since you brought it up, why don't we roll straight into that? What are the available monies right now from the federal aid, if you're comfortable talking about that?
Well, we can talk. I can talk a little bit about the PPP, and that people have seen the payroll loans that the Congress passed the law to allow people who are paying employees to go out and get, I believe, up to 8 weeks of payroll. And ultimately, you won't have to repay it so long as you employ those people for quite some time. So those were due already. Hold on, I'm having internet instability. Hold on. And I'm hopeful that each of you have had a relationship and talked to your local bank already about that. Every bank is taking those applications, from the smallest to the biggest, from Bank of America to Pinnacle Bank in Nashville to First Tennessee. I'm sure, every bank you've heard of and seen in Billboard or seen on Music Business Worldwide or wherever, they're taking those applications if you have an account with them. So I would start with whoever you have an account with. I have not heard of no one has gotten rejected from those yet. My personal belief on those is that they're going to prioritize their bigger clients first, but everyone should apply. Every single person should go apply and take care of that first. I also saw that Apple made available, I believe, through Merlin. They announced that Apple made available an artist and label fund for labels who have direct deals with them to get paid, to get advances if you had more than $10,000 in income a quarter. I think that will roll out pretty quickly, and that's going to be great. And I suspect other distributors will also be able to do that. You can also go to your distributor. I assume most of you have gone to your distributor already, if you're not distributed by Merlin, and ask them for advance. And frankly, if you have a reasonable business, I'm sure that most distributors will be able to work something out with you. So that's the first, second, and third thing I would do, all under the assumption that we will get back to normal. I think I think you have to view that this is going to be a 6-month crisis. I don't think you should view it to be shorter than that, because I think that's unrealistic. But I think if you start thinking about what's going to happen over the next year or two, I think it's almost paralyzing, because it's impossible to plan, right? And if you view it as a short-term crisis and you make reasonable decisions based on your existing business, you should be fine. I think where people will get in trouble is they were already in trouble, which is problematic, or gambling and being wrong. Music business is filled with gamblers, but doesn't mean that you should do that at this particular time.
Thank you. Yeah. So one question that comes up a lot from our labels is, what to do about their artists, because artists are in a desperate state right now. Do you have any advice there, what the artists should do?
Well, I think what the artists should do is actually relatively similar to what the labels are doing. I think the artist situation is actually much more challenging in some ways because of the live business. You know, fortunately, a lot of the label business is coming digitally now, which seems to be standing up okay. Physical, of course, being not so okay. And so I think the artists are kind of in a similar situation. What they're going to be doing is looking to their labels, looking to their publishers, looking to PROs like Sound Exchange and ASCAP and BMI to see if they're, you know, to get paid from them. You know, I think the rest of it is relatively pretty obvious for them. They should do their own cash flow statements too. They often have business managers, bigger artists. Smaller artists don't. They'll have to use their judgment, but hopefully they don't have huge payrolls that they have to worry about now. I think that's the biggest source of stress to me. You know, fortunately, where I am now at Concord, we're a pretty strong company, and I don't have to worry about this like I did when we were a small independent company, you know, 10 years ago and before that. But I think the biggest source of stress for me is making sure that we take care of, you know, the employees and the artists that we work with. I think that our success and our continued growth that matters. You know, people will remember how, you know, 6 months from now, your first instinct was to basically screw them. So that's not my instinct. I see a question here, Richard, that I don't know if you want to take questions. I think it's relevant to what I just said.
I think so too, yeah. So the question is, how do you plan to get back to normal? You know, if we may have a new definition of normal, you know, 6 months from now. I mean, obviously, this is the new normal right now, but clearly that will not be. So do you have any suggestions as to how we can transition back to normal?
I guess when I mean normal, I don't mean that the world is going to go back to the way it was 6 months ago. However, 6 months from now, you will have had a few months of what the current world is. So you'll be able to base your decisions on, you know, reasonable assumptions around that. You know, be it the streaming revenue, the download revenue, your expenses, you know, in terms of, you'll have seen how other artists who release music during this crisis fared, how some artists who didn't, how they fared. You'll have examples from the real world to look at to inform what you do. And so that's why I mean, you know, get back to normal. I don't mean, you know, I think things will never be the same, much in the way that after 9/11, traveling and flying was never the same. However, business will continue, and I think you will no longer have to be in this complete state of what I'm calling is just being very careful. You know, maybe it'll be a year, maybe I'm wrong, maybe on my time frame, but you know, once we have we've been unfortunately doing this now for about a month, and where are we now? Say June 1, it looks like we won't be anywhere near back to normal till the following March. You know, God forbid, right? Then I think you have to have a totally different look at your business at that point. So that's another deadline I would set, which is pick a deadline you feel comfortable with, June 1, right? And say, after that, you know, once I know if I don't think we're going to get back to normal, I'm going to do X or Y. You know, if you're a vinyl business, say you are primarily a vinyl oriented label, of which we have, I think that you are in a completely new world versus if you are a streaming oriented label, right? You're just going to have to adjust to that concept. Unfortunately, I think I think this is going to exacerbate the decline in physical. Many of our indie stores that are so supportive of marketing probably won't make it. Hopefully the ones that do make it, which should be the majority of them, will be the ones who are good merchandisers, really supported and invested in their local communities. Amazon is strong, of course. You know, I think, you know, you may see some changes at some of the second tier physical accounts, but D2C exists, still will exist. I'm still getting packages. Amazon exists. There'll be businesses. You may just have to be more careful for longer. You know, presuming if I think the biggest risk we as an industry have right now, which everyone knows, is about subscribers to our streaming businesses. You know, my presumption is that people are going to continue to subscribe to Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Sirius, all those great things. I saw today that Disney Plus announced record subscribers. So unless there is a long protracted recession, which is not impossible, I think those should stay pretty strong. My also personal belief is that if I'm looking to cut back and save money, I might start with Spotify, or I might start with my cable bill if I have cable, or my phone bill, or some bigger things. So I think we as an industry have some protection, but this goes on for a year and all bets are off. You'll see some, last thing I'll say is you're going to see the effects of this, as this questioner asked, for forever, because you're going to see late effects on a lot of the PROs whose money come from live and whose money come from performance. So it won't bounce back necessarily right away, but I feel good that we'll be I'm feeling good about November. How about that?
Yeah, good.
I'm feeling really good about November.
Well, I agree with you. I think this is going to be longer than certainly we sometimes hear on television. But, that raises a good point. With the music industry, having this system of payment that's quite delayed, how do you think that affects planning? Because what could happen here is that money for the moment could flow through quite well from streaming or the other various sources, but then 6 months from now, a year from now, there could be a massive dip. So you have any advice there in terms of planning, for that moment? Or
I don't think you're going to see, I could be naive, but I don't think you're going to see that right now. I think where people are really getting hurt is in the physical side of the business right now. It's basically, really, and I think that there's a lot of costs about, buying vinyl, buying CDs. I think there's a lot of that's kind of hitting, immediately impacting. I'm hopeful that most of you who are directly distributed, have your own deals, are getting paid within 90 days at the latest, preferably much sooner. I do think you'll see, like I said, if you're a more publishing oriented company, I think you might see some dips in next year from a variety of those things. But I think I looked recently, and a pretty substantial amount of the publishing revenue is starting to come from the DSPs. So I think you could see a reduction, but I don't know that you'll see a complete drop off. I also think that there was announcements, right? There's some emails about various PROs. Some are saying they'll tap their reserves. I think GEMA in Germany made a pretty big pool available, right, for German labels. So I do think you'll see some of the PROs tapping their reserves, or maybe even accelerating payments to do whatever they can to get money in people's hands right away.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations on the advances? I mean, obviously when you take an advance, that affects future money. So do you have any thoughts about that? How?
Let me rephrase that. I've had different points in my career where I was very in favor of advances and some where I'm not, right? So it all depends on whether you can use the cash better or use to drive a better bargain with your distributor, to get a better fee, or in the case of Merlin, you have a pretty good fee already. So I think that there's no reason, and this is just my opinion, I'm not a distributor, but I think there's no reason why, most of the bigger distribution companies can't give some advances of a few months, to help people out, right? But equally, they could make sure that their payments just continue to flow regularly. Right? It's nice to know if you're it's nice to know that your sources of funding are coming from Spotify and Apple and Amazon, the biggest companies in the world, who are either paying you directly or paying, your distributor, which could be owned by Universal or Sony or Warner, or some of our independent distributors, like Secretly and Red Eye. They're also great companies, and they should have this similar financial wherewithal to help out their labels. And I know, of course, those owners and founders well, and they have good instincts, good intuition, and I know they care about their distributed labels.
are there wise ways to use those advances, would you say, going forward right now? And given that you're recommending caution in terms of cash flow, so, you could take an advance and, try to expand your business right now. Would that be a good move?
I think you should go to the casinos if you can find one that's open. I think, well, this is where as a CPA, as a former CPA, I'm generally conservative on these things. I think the best way to, my opinion is the best way is to focus on the artists and projects that, are either doing the best right now or have the most potential immediately. I think it's very difficult to launch a touring musician right now. I think it's just challenged. They can't tour to support you. So I think it's about being selective. It's about even more curation. The world will be here in September. You can start your campaign then. No one wants to hear that because people are excited to get going now, right? But on a personal note, for our KIDZ BOP business, we moved our UK tour back an entire year a few weeks ago. We weren't happy about it, right? But it made sense to us to do that. And we did get complaints that we got complaints on a lot of social media complaint, but that was the right decision for us and for our fans. So I think literally the best thing to do is to not be overly precious about anything.
Right. I mean, people are excited to get their projects going, but they're not excited to see them disappear into a black hole, which is what.
That's exactly right. Right. So that's the problem. That's the biggest challenge. I'd be curious if anyone has an experience on this where, I have I hear mixed things about whether, right now is a great time to release music or not. For every, we see some things that are doing extremely well. I think people are consuming a lot of media, a lot of social media. Some, people want to listen to new music. There's no reason we shouldn't release new music. Does that mean we should release as much as we were? Unclear. And here's the bigger problem. If you don't do it now, is everyone going to run a release music come October 1? Which means an even more crowded marketplace, which, more competitive. So I think that's really a project by project decision.
Well, it's probably related also to your promotional methodology. If it's a touring band, as you say, then you're in a difficult position right now. But if there are means of promoting the record without backing it up with touring, then maybe now is a good time, right? Because it's going to be a lighter time for releases, I would imagine.
I think so, but I think I think that it's I really think that you have to have critical thinking about each and every thing that you're doing right now. I instructed our touring team to literally go through every single thing they're doing, right? And look at it and think about it. I did notice, here's something interesting. I noticed that I feel like people have had time to resolve like Sound Exchange and YouTube and other disputes right now. People are actually spending time at home cleaning those things up. Productive, fun, for me at least. And will ultimately make your business function better. So there are things that are being done right now that may not seem important, but are actually going to enable you to be more successful later on.
Right. So one of the things that you touched on earlier was contracts. If you have a contract in place, that you suddenly realize, well, this is not going to work out. How do you recommend dealing with that?
So not a lawyer, so not advising legally here, not a lawyer, not a doctor either, not a lawyer. And I think my personal opinion is everyone here knows that everything is negotiable, right? So every contract is negotiable. I think people should honor their agreements. It's really important to me. I think you should call your partners and tell them what you think, right? If there's something where you have an issue, I think now is not the time to be shy. Call them, tell them, What's the worst thing they could say to you? Do this, do that, you promised. Okay, it's a new world. Here's what I can do. Here's what I can't do. You know, level-headed. If they say, well, that means you're breaching, okay, well, we can discuss the consequences of that. I don't want to. I want to work with you, right? You know, I think you just have to be very direct with all your partners now. I mean, there's nothing, directness will save you a lot of angst.
Yeah.
You know, some contracts have, I mean, I know there's a big thing about force majeure and, you know, all those things. That to me is not, this is not the time for that. You know, I mean, maybe with regard to insurance, and there are things where it matters, but like, you know, for me, this is just about, it's an opportunity to engage with the people you work with more.
Absolutely. But I mean, what do you do if somebody's saying, well, no, I mean, we're not gonna let you out of this. You know, if you have a force majeure, I think at that point you would have to.
Depends on the situation, right? Yeah. I'd have to know a specific situation in order to, you know, evaluate what I would do in that situation. I can't answer it, you know?
Yeah, no, and we're not here to give legal advice either, but.
Exactly.
So,
I'll give you private legal advice off now. Call me. _, no.
Thank you so much, Vic. I mean, is there anything else you want to add? I think, you know, you've covered an awful lot of ground here and we really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I don't know if anybody had any questions. I mean, I think, you know, what I guess the main takeaway I'd like to add for people is that, you know, just be calm. And if you will come out of this, I believe most of us, not all, but most of us will come out of this with a much better understanding of what we're supposed to do on a day-to-day basis. And I think that will help us down the road.
Thank you. That's great advice. I really appreciate it. And I have to say, I've always appreciated your advice, you know, from being on the board with you. And since I've been president and CEO, you've always given me great advice. And I really appreciate it. So it's been wonderful working with you. And I just want to say to everybody, we have a lot of resources on our site. Our team has been working extra hard to make sure that we're feeding out all the information to you. So if you go to our portal, there's a huge amount of resources there, and we refer through to lots of other resources out there, and we're updating those daily. So if you're confused as to what the possibilities are, you know, please look on our portal, and I think you'll find something there. Obviously, if it's not, then just email us. And if you know of other resources that we're missing, please send them to us, and we'll post them. We'll get them out there, because everybody's in the same boat right now. And we want to do everything we possibly can to make sure everybody's in a good place. And thank you again, Vic Zaraya from KIDZ BOP and R&T Industries. Greatly appreciate it, Vic. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.